Love Island. The villa seemed very against people who found a strong connection off the bat. And potentially was it a tactic to ensure that there's not a couple front runner that viewers can get attached to, aka like it was a game strategy in order to make it to the end? I don't know. And I don't know if it's like this every season. I don't know if like people are usually anti-people coupling up and being like tunnel vision super early. What I do know was that it was so fucking annoying for the conversations between these islanders over and over and over again to be like, I'm so open, I'm literally so open. And then an hour later, they're upset and jealous because the person they're interested in is exploring other people. Like, hello, double standards this season are going crazy. Huda is also a mother. She had a daughter at a very young age, isn't currently with her baby daddy. She confided this in Jeremiah, and I thought he took it pretty well, honestly. I don't know. So that's Huda and Jeremiah. Then we have Shelly and her many men. I saw a post before I started watching the show about how Shelly isn't getting any attention even though she's the prettiest one in the villa. Y'all, are we watching the same show? All my girl gets is attention, which, you know, as she should. She is gorgeous. Shelly was in a love triangle for a while, low-key, with Ace and Austin. Charlie initially showed interest in her, but then pivoted towards Hannah, the bombshell that entered with Amaya, and they hit it off, like, very immediately, which, if you've been paying attention, that does not bode well for them. The chemistry between Shelly and Ace, at least to me, was evident pretty much immediately. So much so that I wonder why they were so content. It seemed like a while to me, but looking back, maybe it wasn't that long, but it seemed like they were pretty content for a while not being coupled up. And I don't put much stock into the, you know, rumors that circulate on the internet, and the one that I'm particularly alluding to is the were Shelly and Ace a couple before they entered the villa rumor. However, it seemed to me like they were very much on the same page about not coupling up super early and then getting together, like, as the show progressed. Even though it seemed very clear that they were both very into each other from the beginning, that whole thing was a little sus to me. Because how are y'all, like, so completely on the same page about that, you know what I mean? I don't know. Also, they both seem smart, and at the end of the day, this is a game that you can approach strategically. Ace in particular strikes me as the type of guy to come into this with a game plan. And here's the thing, he was actually the driving force between the anti-love bombing agenda that I saw in the villa, and then people followed suit. That's just my speculation. Of course, I could be totally wrong again, because I feel like whenever I say things like that, like, what if he wasn't the driving force? What if they cut out a major moment in the show? We only get shown what they want us to see. So even though it's called a reality TV show, these opinions are not based on fact. They're not based on reality. They're based off of the narrative that we got in the show. And I think it's fair and fun to have discussions about what we're shown on the show, as long as we kind of keep a mental divide between what the narrative happening on the show and, like, reality. So anyway, that's Ace, Shelly, and Austin. Now we have Alandria and Taylor. I don't know if I feel this way because when I was watching these earlier episodes, I already knew what was going to happen, but I will say, at no point did I feel like Taylor was romantically or even really emotionally invested in Alandria, just based on, like, his body language, based on stuff they said, the things that he did. Alandria did decide to kiss Ace in one of the first challenges, and Taylor, as well as Austin, was interested in kissing Sierra when she first came in, so, you know, I think that goes to show about where the connections were at. But that then brings us to Sierra, Nick, and Bella, the love triangle. Bella and Nick were coupled up, but Bella was definitely, like, the most conservative of the group in terms of physical affection. Like, she wasn't really kissing people on the lips. She wasn't, you know, going all out in the challenges until one of the last challenges that she did, where she really went all out. But, you know, my girl, she's a lover girl. She had only been with, like, one other person prior to this show. And like I said, as the episodes went on, she was definitely pushed out of her comfort zone in an effort to win over Nick, whose head was turned in Sierra's direction. Thus, in the recoupling, Jeremiah chose Huda, not a surprise. Taylor chose Alandria, not a surprise. Charlie chose Hannah, not a surprise. Ace chose Amaya. A little bit of a surprise to me, but maybe that's because, again, I was watching this, like, retrospectively. But Ace, listen, one thing about Ace is he's always going to pick the bombshells. And then Austin chose Shelly. He, you know, is in a love triangle with her, liked her for a while. Nick was really two-timing Bella and Sierra. Like, Not a good look for him. His fucking whole 50-50, 80-20, that shit annoyed me, okay? And anyways, after he chose Sierra and him were pretty locked in from that point. Like, not as locked in as Huda and Jeremiah, but, you know, they were always, like, pretty much together from that point on. Alright, so now we get into this next era. Huda eventually reveals that she is a mother to everyone, and this was literally her conversation with Nick. It was hilarious. I'm a mommy.
Mommy?
I'm a mom.
Mamacita.
No, I'm a mommy. A mom of what? A dog? I have a daughter. Like in real life? Yeah. Like a daughter, like a real baby? Yeah, like a human child. In episode 9, we get 3 new bombshells, Pepe, Jalen, and Iris. Jaden initially goes for Alandria, you know, sticks with it. That's pretty much the only one he's involved with. Iris initially wants Jeremiah, but does not pursue him too hard after seeing his situation with Huda. Pepe initially goes for Sierra. He actually did say that Sierra was his type, but based on his track record for the rest of the show, you know, we will get into that later. He then quickly pivots to Hannah. Hannah then enters this mini love triangle, but she eventually decides that she wants to pursue her connection with Charlie, leaving Pepe in the dust. Alandria is in a love triangle with Taylor and Jalen, who are both countrymen, and Alandria has stated many a time that that is in fact her type. She loves a countryman. Ace, like I said, loves his bombshells, or rather, honestly, it seemed like he loves the idea of bombshells, loves the idea of exploring. He had a little chat with Iris, but mind you, he's currently coupled up with Amaya after choosing her. That couple went south real quick because Ace was uncomfortable with Amaya cuddling him and calling him babe and stuff, even though, like, in terms of the whole babe thing, it was less of a term of endearment and more of just, like, her vocabulary. But it bothered him so much to the point that he chose to sleep outside in soul ties rather than in the same bed as Amaya. So even though Amaya and Ace are technically coupled up, 0 sparks are flying. Ace is still pursuing Shelly, although honestly it seemed to me not once during this whole season has he not pursued Shelly. Like, he was always low-key pursuing Shelly from the first episode. So the Ace, Shelly, Austin love triangle is still a thing. Then we get to the main event, the main course, which of course is Huda and Jeremiah. They had such an intense honeymoon phase. They were all over each other. They got intimate with each other. They were talking about life outside the villa. Keep in mind, y'all, it's been a week. It's literally been a week, but, you know, here's the thing. Their downfall was just as intense and just as quick. It low-key all started with pancake gates. Basically, Jeremiah made pancakes for Huda. They weren't cooked properly, so Huda asked Taylor to make a new batch for her. Then Huda got mad at Jeremiah because another man was making pancakes for her instead of him. Like, she was like, another man shouldn't be making pancakes for me. This definitely brought out the worst sides of Huda and Jeremiah, like they're fighting with each other. It caused Huda to crash out. It caused Jeremiah to act like immaturely. She kept saying to him, like, I need you to step it up, and he thought she was being unfair. And he really didn't like when she would name call him. Like, there was this one really bad argument where she was like cussing him out, and she would do that to people who really honestly didn't even deserve it at all. Like, she did that to Amaya, she did that to Iris, just like honestly anybody who, any bombshell who came in and showed an interest in Jeremiah, which again was not a good thing to do and made her look really bad and caused the audience to very much turn on her. And keep in mind that viewers already weren't the biggest fans of Huda because of like a number of reasons like I just mentioned. But after this specific crash out and like fight between her and Jeremiah, oh man. So then it was time for the first vote of season, the first time America would have their say in what goes down in the show. We were going to choose who the new bombshell should end up with. And the viewers came up with something very devious. They specifically voted for Iris to couple up with Jeremiah, knowing that it would cause Huda to crash out even further. And honestly, that seems pretty fucked up to me. After watching the show, it seems really clear to me that Huda has specific triggers that lead to emotional outbursts. And it seems very evil to do something to purposefully trigger one of these outbursts. So, the results of the vote are revealed. Jalen was voted to couple up with Alandria, not a surprise. Pepe was voted to couple up with Hannah, not a surprise, but at the time this was pretty devastating considering Hannah had just chosen Charlie over him, and so now she was forced to be in a couple with Pepe, so awkward. And finally, successfully, the operation was pulled off and Iris was voted to couple up with Jeremiah. which meant that the 3 Islanders in jeopardy of being voted off were the other half of these couples, aka Taylor, Charlie, and Huda. Charlie is the only bombshell out of these 3, aka he's been here for the least amount of time. The OG boys are all pretty close, particularly Nick and Jeremiah. Like, there were different points in the show where Nick and Jeremiah were like, oh my god, you're my bestie, you're my bro.
That's 10.
So it was up to the Islanders to choose which person out of these 3 who would get kicked off the island for good. And when this was revealed to them, the Islanders were crying as if they were just told they had to kill a person. It was crazy. Austin voted for Taylor, which was slightly surprising given, like I said, the OG boy bond of Sierra, Shelly, and Maya voted for Charlie, which seemed sort of like the safe vote, so not that surprising. But Amaya voting for Charlie was kind of ironic considering she rejected Charlie's advancements towards her to do right by Hannah, but she contributed in Charlie leaving the villa, which low-key did Hannah dirty, so I don't know, it's just kind of ironic. Ace and Nick voted for Huda. Now, there were a lot of memes about this decision, a lot of memes about Ace laughing when it was revealed that Iris was supposed to be coupled up with Jeremiah. But in terms of the voting situation, with Ace and Nick voting for Huda, particularly a popular meme was people were referencing the moment in Attack on Titan where Reindeer and Ballerina Capuchina revealed themselves to be the Armored and Colossal Titan because, like I just said, all the guys are close. So it was kind of a stab in the back for closest friends in the villa to try and vote off the girl. But since Charlie had the most votes, he was voted off, causing Hannah to sob her eyes out. My girl was devastated. Luckily, she had my man Pepito to comfort her in bed, and they got busy pretty soon after Charlie left. So yeah, Hannah and Pepe, they got close. They became like a couple. After this debacle, Jeremiah and Austin became a duo, a little like bro solidarity, if you will. Taylor, Nick, and Ace became a trio, and this trio would last like literally all the way throughout the show, aka the anti-Jeremiah love bombing trio. Again, guys, what the fuck is the logic here? Ace claims that since Jeremiah started something super quick with Huda and later on with another bombshell, that he's a chronic love bomber. What about Pepe? I've heard not a peep of the same energy towards Pepe, even though he did like pretty much the same damn thing. Also, what about Sierra, who's pretty much been Team Nick ever since the beginning? Like, there's no consistency with these people. Arguably, it works in your best interest if a couple closes off super early unless you're interested in a person in that couple. And we have literally a real life example of this phenomenon because the only reason Iris was talking to Ace was because Jeremiah and Huda were closed off. So, this recoupling led to the irreversible demise between Jeremiah and Huda. Because the two of them were the strongest couple in the villa by far, the both of them figured that the voters were trying to tell them that the other person wasn't right for them, like the other person was toxic. America was trying to look out for them. Like, that's both what they were thinking individually, and this became very distrustful of each other. So the 3 new couples, to remind you, are Landry and Jalen, Iris and Jeremiah,
I need to go to
and these 3
We
couples on a beach date together. Huda was very upset when they came back. Huda had this conversation with Iris that was pretty funny that you might have heard on TikTok. What was the date? I was just like sitting down.
I like how each one's different. I mean, this is the point of it, right? Like,
and
if you look
who
at
knows that shit was hilarious
they're
considering
all different.
Iris was very much trying to downplay the date as much as possible to spare Huda's feelings, and Huda still hit her back with my dream date. And B, Jeremiah had absolutely no say in what the date was whatsoever. Huda was also mad at Jeremiah that he didn't check in on her after she was almost voted off. So this whole Jeremiah-Huda situation has really made the villa dislike the two of them together, and quite frankly, most of them didn't seem to like Huda in general in the first place. The Ace trio does not seem to like Jeremiah for the love bombing like I mentioned. Then we get another recoupling. The guys got to choose the girl they wanted to be with as long as the feeling was mutual. Nick and Sierra remained, Pepe and Hannah remained, Taylor and Alandria remained, which put Jalen in jeopardy because he also chose Alandria. Ace chose Shelly, so they became a couple. Austin chose Amaya, and they became a couple. And finally, Jeremiah chose Iris, so they remained, which put Huda in jeopardy. Then, the Islanders had to vote whether they were going to kick off Jalen or Huda. All the girls backed Huda, all the guys backed Jalen. The only 2 that didn't, which ultimately resulted in Huda being saved, were Taylor and Ace. For Taylor, it makes sense considering Jalen was going after his girl, so why would he want Jalen in the villa? For Ace, I don't really know why he chose Huda. Like, that doesn't really make sense to me given everything that's been going down, but I don't know, maybe he was more anti-Jeremiah than anti-Huda, and maybe he actually liked Huda, I don't know. So anyway, Jalen was kicked off, but he then became TikTok's princess. Like, he literally gained 1 million followers on TikTok so fast. He has a very cute, wholesome vibe to him. Going on Love Island was his first time going out of the country, and, you know, he likes to visit his grandma in his free time. He bought a cake for himself to celebrate 1 million followers, so all of that, the people are big fans of Jalen. Then Megan Thee Stallion entered the villa, not as a bombshell or anything, just as like a guest host, and she introduced 2 new bombshells, TJ and Andrina, who everyone on TikTok was going feral over because everything about her is tea. I mean, look at her. So the bombshell that I mentioned before, that Jeremiah and really hit it off with was Andrina. And, you know, like I said before, that happened really quickly, like Jeremiah and Andrina's progression. Which brings me to the second voting opportunity for fans. Everyone was told to vote for their favorite Islander, and then the bottom 3 guys and bottom 3 gals would be in jeopardy. This ended up being Amaya, Iris, and Hannah for the girls, and Pepe, Austin, and Jeremiah for the boys. The girl Islanders in the villa had to decide which girl to kick out, and the boy Islanders had to decide which boy to kick out. The girls ended up picking Hannah, and the guys picked Jeremiah. Now, this was devastating for Hannah and Pepe because they had a romance blossoming, blooming. I mean, we thought it was over for Hannah. She was crying up a storm, but now she was with Pepe, and everything was fine and dandy. And this decision would actually haunt Pepe for a little bit of time. Hannah just couldn't catch a break. Here's the thing. Do I really understand why they voted out Jeremiah? No. Was it probably just because, like, they didn't like him or the love-bombing situation? Maybe. I personally, like, I don't dislike Jeremiah. I don't like him. I found him to be immature at times, but I never thought that he was, like, playing Huda or being disingenuous or anything. I've seen people on TikTok embracing him because of the fact that he's a self-proclaimed nerd and he watches anime and reads books. And I just saw a TikTok actually of him reading one of the Sarah J. Maas Cotard series books shirtless, and honestly, like, that gave me the ick. I was like, brother. But anyways, now it's time for Casa Amor. And Casa Amor, it's like bombshells to the extreme. So basically what happens is usually I think the guys leave the villa and go to Casa Amor, and they meet like a bunch of new girls, and then the girls stay in the villa, the original girls, and they meet a bunch of new guys. And basically Casa Amor is to test whether the original relationships that you've made, like the original couples that you've been in, is to test the strength of that relationship. So by meeting all these new people, at the end of it, you get to decide, okay, do you want to pursue this new relationship that you've like started to explore in Casa, or do you go back to your original couple? And it's supposed to be really dramatic. There are betrayals. Like, one person may say, hey, you know, I actually prefer my original couple. Meanwhile, their partner is, you know, making out with someone in Casa. But the thing is that the reason why it's so dramatic is because you have a handful of strong connections going into Casa, because then that leaves room for betrayal. This season, there was pretty much like not really any solid couples. I mean, Jeremiah and Huda would have been interesting to see, but they had just gotten broken up, and Jeremiah has now left the villa. So, I mean, we've got Sierra and Nick, who were like kind of established at this point, as well as Taylor and Alandria. For the most part, a lot of the people were single, which is why this time they did Casa more differently. Basically, the girls went to Casa, everybody started from a clean slate, everybody was single, and then immediately got recoupled with, you know, a bunch of different guys and gals. I'm just going to read off this list to you. There's a lot of new people incoming, but don't worry, not everybody is super relevant here. In the villa, we have Pepe and Grayson, Ace and Vanna, Austin and Jaden, Taylor and Coco, and Clark and Nick. In Casa, we have JD and Huda, Sierra and Elan, Shelly and Chris, Iris and Zach, Andrina and Brian, and Zach and Alandria. Now, obviously, I just said I know I've thrown a lot of new names at you, so let me narrow down the herd for you. So, the following people were kicked off pretty immediately due to a series of dramatic recouplings that I'm honestly not going to get into because like, at the end of the day, I feel like these people were only here for like 1 or 2 episodes. These are the people that got kicked off. JD, Zach with a C, Vanna, and Coco. Out of the 4 of these people, the only person that really caused, I would say, like a major stir, at least on social media, was Vanna, because she has had a noticeable amount of work done and, like, you know, plastic surgery, fillers, Botox, whatever, but she's only 21. And so obviously people were up in arms, making fun of her appearance, which is something that we're not going to do. Also, apparently she was allergic. Okay, I don't know who said this or where it was said, but my sister told me that Vanna was allergic to the pillows in the villa, which made her face more swollen than normal, which did not help the situation. People were roasting her, pulling out yearbooks to speculate when she started getting work done, which is crazy. I would say, as a whole, I do think the whole plastic surgery thing, like, that is an interesting conversation to be had if we're taking, like, individual people out of the equation. Like, I don't want to talk about Vanna specifically, but like in general, I've actually talked about this before. I am pretty I was pretty against plastic surgery as a whole, but then I think I was on TikTok or something and I saw a comment that was like, well, what about trans people? And then I was like, that actually really got me thinking, because what is it exactly am I against? Like, because I do support trans people getting surgery to become and like feel more comfortable in their body, but then how can I be against like these women doing pretty much the same thing? And also, where do I draw the line? I mean, am I anti-makeup because it's not natural? Am I anti-shaving because it's not natural? Like, I don't know, like, why is surgery a big deal? I've come to the conclusion that I think my discomfort with honestly any sort of alteration, especially when it comes to really young people partaking, is that like it makes us miserable. We can say that people are, you know, having these alterations done for their own happiness, but why are they unhappy in the first place? Because they saw someone else that has been marketed as the ideal form of attractiveness and felt compelled to replicate that. But then, by replicating that, they then potentially doom someone else to the same fate, and it's just like a vicious cycle derived out of a desire to adhere to a particular beauty standard and become attractive. It's a sort of damned if you do, damned if you don't type of situation, because if you don't conform, you may feel ugly. If you do conform, you potentially spend a lot of money, sometimes permanently alter yourself, and perpetuate this beauty standard and normalize these sort of operations and alterations. And you know what the fuck of it all is? People get plastic surgery probably in part so that people like won't make fun of their face or body, or they're trying to fix some sort of insecurity that they have. But I've seen many cases where people are making fun of the plastic surgery looking bad. So then, like, what was the fucking point? Like, nobody wins. Now, you can choose to ignore beauty standards, but that's a really hard thing to do, like, almost impossible in my opinion. Anyway, sorry I went on a little tangent right there. And maybe it's not that deep because, like, I believe everybody should be able to do what they want with their bodies, but it is that deep if millions of people are feeling shitty about their appearance for no reason. That's the thing that saddens me. Anywho, where were we? So basically, by the end of Casa Amor, like, obviously there was a lot of mix and matching here, and these are, like, the official couples. Austin and Jaden, Amaya and Zach, with a K, Pepe and Grayson, Andrea and Brian, Iris and TJ, Ace and Shelly, Chris and Huda, and Taylor and Clark. You may be like, wait, Amanda, what the fuck? What about Andrea? Well, she was kicked off along with Nick. Just kidding. They were actually sent on a date and were given the choice to return as a couple or like leave the island forever. And obviously they chose to return as a couple. Then they came back. Nick recoupled up with Sierra. So Alandria is now like sort of single, but in a sort of love triangle with Taylor and Clark, while this other guy named Elan is in a love triangle with Nick and Sierra, which is kind of funny because Elan is like sort of a different version of Nick, like they, you know, appearance-wise, very similar vibes. Austin and Jaden, like, they seem like a pretty decent match, although Brian is also interested in Jaden since him and Andrea aren't really hitting it off. Amaya and Zach are very much like the goofy-ish couple. By this point, Amaya has definitely become the people's princess. The viewers have fallen in love with how she's unapologetically herself, a sensitive gangster, serves vocals. I never said I was perfect. I never said I didn't have any flaws. And how she uses metaphors like there's no tomorrow. Maybe I'm just not your cup of tea to be drinking, and if so, don't drink it, bitch. Iris and TJ are very unproblematic and honestly uneventful. Pepe and Grayson are kind of in the same boat. Chris was initially interested in Shelly and was in a love triangle for a minute with Shelly and Ace. After a couple tries, though, he decided to invest his energy in Huda, who he's like technically they're in a couple, so makes sense. Now Taylor and Clark, I haven't actually seen a lot of posts about them myself personally on my TikTok For You page, but based on what I've been seeing, like, and how the voting has actually affected the show, the people do not like them at all. Honestly, like, I'm very neutral about them. All I can see, like, is that from the way Taylor interacts with Clark compared to how he interacted with Alandria, it seems so clear that he did not really have feelings for Alandria. Taylor is giddy and all over Clark, like he's not afraid to be physical with her. He seems so, like, everything is screaming how much more invested he is in Clark than Alandria. And I imagine that people did not like this switch up, considering that he and Alandria have been paired up with each other for like several weeks now, and after only a mere 3 days, now he's like completely Team Clark. And the people in the villa are kind of in the same boat, especially since like everybody loves Alandria, like they don't want to see her go. But yeah, Alandria low-key seemed like she was constantly in jeopardy of being kicked off for like several episodes. Now guys, now we get into some tea. The Heart Rate Challenge and the Stand on Business Challenge. These episodes changed some shit. It caused pretty much the public opinion to flip-flop, do a complete 180. Huda, the girl who had been getting the most shit earlier on, is now being taken back by the people. The people are embracing her. They're making bad bitch edits of her. And conversely, the people are hating on Sierra, Shelly, and Alandria, calling them mean girls. And seeing this twist, this switch up on TikTok without watching the show, was crazy. I was like, guys, what are y'all talking about? Are your opinions really this fickle? Basically, the Heart Rate Challenge is people doing scandalous, raunchy things in an attempt to get people's heart rate up. During this challenge, Shelly got extremely pissed off at Huda because at one point, Huda singled out Ace and was really trying to get his heart rate up, and Huda was the one who got his heart rate up the most. After this happened, like, Shelly and her body language immediately changed, and Huda was trying to, like, reconcile things with her even in the moment. But when they started getting to talking, Huda expressed that she was confused because back in the day when she was like tunnel vision for Jeremiah and being really overprotective of him, Shelly was the one telling Huda that it was just a challenge and to like stop ragging on the other bombshells. But then when Huda is saying it now, like as an excuse, well, not as an excuse, but as an explanation, like, oh, it was just a challenge, I didn't mean anything by it, she's confused about now why there's like a double standard because Shelly was the one who said it was just a challenge in the first place, and now that same logic doesn't apply to Huda. Shelly was also mad about the fact that Huda said that one of the lines of reasoning for coupling up with Chris was that she wanted to bring him back to the villa so that Shelly could explore Chris as well. Shelly thought that that was being disingenuous because now Huda's like really trying to pursue him now, and she thought that that wasn't a very girl move. So here's the thing. In terms of this isolated specific situation, based on the show and what we've been shown, it really seems like Shelly and Alandria were being very hypocritical because in this challenge, the Heart Rate Challenge, I cannot emphasize enough how everybody was kissing everybody. Like, everybody was all over everybody, regardless of whether they were in a couple with a really strong connection. Like, all the girls were making out with Sierra, even though, like, Nick was right there. And Shelly herself, matter of fact, was making out with Chris, then doubled back for seconds. Oh, yes, she did. So then Ace actually brought up how, the whole doubling back thing made him uncomfortable, and Shelly was like, well, I thought you said we could explore, and he was like, well, I don't understand because that seems hypocritical to me because me and Huda have nothing going on, whereas you and Chris are actively trying to explore your connection, like, outside of this challenge. We're in an active love triangle together, and all the people on TikTok were like, wow, Shelly must really be messing up if she's making me agree with Ace, which Loki, yeah. On top of that, like getting to Alandria and her involvement in this, Alandria and Sierra are both like heavy Team Shelly, giving Huda shit. Mind you, I didn't mention this before, but after Nick and Alandria went on that date, they decided to kiss outside of a challenge. And like the whole big deal with that is like when people kiss and make out in challenges, like people tend not to get jealous about that because it's almost like that's what you're supposed to do in a challenge. Like people don't put that much weight on that at all, except for maybe like Huda and Jeremiah really early on, when they were like super overprotective of each other. But like that's kind of toxic shit. That's not the norm. But if you are like being physical with each other outside of challenges, that's taken a lot more seriously. And so Nick and Alandria did in fact kiss and soul ties outside of a challenge to explore their relationship. So in that case, how does Alandria have any fucking room to talk when she kissed Nick when she's besties with Sierra? When she knows Sierra and Nick have the strongest connection in the villa. During Casamora, when Sierra was purposefully not even getting physical with Elan to be respectful and do right by Nick. Also, don't even get me started on the Nick and Alandria shippers. I will say, Nick does in fact look very happy when talking with Alandria, and I do truly see Alandria igniting a spark in Nick's eye that I have never ever seen before. Nick also did say, and I clocked this immediately in episode 1, that Alandria like pretty much caught his attention off the bat, and then doubled down on that after they went on their date and he told her that. However, after their kiss and soul ties, that was the one that was outside of the challenge, the next day they were both like, ew, that didn't feel right, we're definitely just friends. Glad we can both agree on that. Remember that, guys? And so like I think that this whole thing really rubs people the wrong way because like they're seeing all these double standards, all this hypocrisy, and then Huda even asked Alandria if she's a terrible person for what she did to Shelly regarding the whole Ace heart rate situation, and Alandria responded, I wouldn't say you're a terrible person, girl. So some other tea that was happening during the heart rate challenge, Alandria was trying to get between Taylor and Clark, Elan was trying to get between Nick and Sierra, and here are the heart rate challenge in case you're curious. So one thing to note about these results is that Pepe and Andreina's results matched, like they both got each other's heart rate up the most. However, when she approached him to potentially explore a relationship with him, he rejected her. It seems he's into blondes. Sorry, girl. Then we get to the stand on business game. This game was the messiest, most instigating shit I've ever seen in my 21 years. Basically, the Islanders were instructed to write letters if they've got shit to say, like this was the opportunity to stand on business, if you will. They could either sign it or keep it anonymous, depending on how mean or messy they were going to be. In this game, Miss Hannah's name, mind you, she's been gone for a little bit of time now. She kept being brought up in relation to Pepe. Matter of fact, he straight up asked the girls, he was the one to bring her up in his letter addressed to Shelly and Sierra and Alandria about why they decided to vote Hannah off. And the girls gave some BS answer about finding connections too soon or whatnot, and how she had the privilege of finding two strong connections with Charlie and Pepe. But who's really to say why they voted the way they did? I really don't know. Anyways, we learned that my boy Pepe has been thinking about Hannah this entire time, ever since she left. And because, I do feel bad for Grayson, because obviously none of this was her fault and she was just put in a really bad situation. But this led Pepe to, straight up friend zone Grayson and, end their connection, which was unfortunate for her. Nick told Huda that she should have gone home instead of Hannah, which, damn dude, you act like a friend to her face, defend her when she's not around, and yet advocate for her to be kicked out of the villa thrice. Shelly told Huda that she isn't a girl's girl because of their beef that I previously described to you, which doesn't really make any sense to me, but whatever. Then Alandria gets, well, actually, it doesn't make sense for the things that Shelly cited in her letter. However, I will say that a couple examples of Huda not being a girl's girl was when she was really ragging on Iris and Amaya when they were going after Jeremiah. I don't think that was a girl's girl meant to do. But the things that Shelly was listing as for why that Huda's not a girl's girl, I don't agree with that. But then Alandria gets messy and reveals to the group that Huda and Chris kissed in the speakeasy, and that is one of the reasons why Huda isn't a girl's girl, which again, I don't really agree with, and I don't know why that was such like a, like a secret to share, like a big, what's it called, like a bomb to drop, because mind you, Chris and Huda are coupled up, officially. Like, it's not scandalous if they're kissing because they're in a couple. And Shelly and Chris, like, they've barely spoken throughout this whole thing, so it's not like Shelly and Chris are really, like, making moves here. Like, Shelly's always been about Ace. And Alandria literally kissed Nick in Soul Ties! That's the thing, though. How can you paint what Huda did as some super scandalous thing when you did something objectively worse? This is actually the second time that Alandria has aired out dirty laundry about a kiss, because she told Sierra that Nick was kissing Bella, like, way back in the day, and Sierra was like, OMG, that was literally just minutes before me, and Alandria was like, ooh, messy. Alandria was having a tough time that night, though, because she was going in on Taylor for ditching her when she put so much effort into him, and then he straight up says in front of everybody that he chooses Clark. So that was pretty scandalous. The real kicker, though, was when Austin said that Amaya cries more than she needs to and moves too fast for everyone, which causes Ace to pipe up and say, yeah, the whole babe thing was way too much, which causes Zach, aka the dude she's currently coupled up with, to be like, yeah, you actually are too much, and like, I let you kiss me and stuff, even when I don't really want to. So obviously Amaya starts crying because, damn, why the dog pile, guys? That was so mean. My girl's just affectionate, and you're shaming her for that. Brian was the only one to step up and be like, hey, because saying things like babe or mi amor or mi vida is a part of Hispanic culture, so just gotta be mindful of that. So then, the next day, like I said, Pepe and Grayson call it quits. Zach and Amaya call it quits, and she calls him an extremely odd individual, which was pretty funny. Chris and Huda are pretty solid, which was good to see. It was funny because Chris was like, I attract emotionally unstable women. It appears so, but it appears so. Then Huda was like, have you ever cheated? And Chris was like, yeah, once, which was kind of funny. Not funny, but like, Jeremiah also cheated once, so there's some patterns going on here. Sierra and Nick go on a date and establish that they're closed off. They're the first in the villa to do so. Then, we have the first time the Islanders catch a glimpse of what, or like how America thinks of them. So this was another voting opportunity, except it wasn't like, well, eventually it did lead to Islanders being in jeopardy, but mainly it was like a sort of ranking system. Now the tea is, I'm not 100% sure if this is true. I'm pretty sure it is, but, because I wasn't partaking in the voting when this was happening. But I've been seeing a lot of TikToks that said apparently the voting for this particular, like, America Ranks Burst Your Bubble challenge took place after the Heart Rate challenge, but before the Stand on Business challenge. And the Stand on Business challenge was what really, really turned the tides against Shelly, or Alandria, and Sierra. And so during this challenge, a lot of people were surprised to see Sierra and Alandria reflected positively in the voting given what had happened. And also, one thing that I need to bring up is that by this point, there had been another development brewing regarding Sierra. Be prepared to get deja vu. I guess during, these recent episodes, screenshots started circulating of Sierra using the C slur to describe her eyes in a negative way in an Instagram story in 2024 as an explanation for why she was getting Botox, I think, there. And this offended the Asian community, and there was a massive outcry to get her off the show, as they did with Elissa. The removal of Sierra was, I don't think it was as quick as the removal of Elissa. In fact, viewers were wondering if Sierra was even going to get removed at all, because this is well into the show by this point. And also, she just closed off things. Nick, she was a fan favorite, had a huge following on Instagram, and it's a weird thing to compare slurs, but I don't know, people were arguing that the N slur has a very specific connotation, or the N word has a very specific connotation, and that potentially the C slur wasn't as bad. But then others from the Asian community were like, why the double standard? Asian racism always seems to get overlooked. And the other layer of this, the thing that really added fuel to the flame and fire, was that apparently Sierra had used this slur multiple times. I'm a little bit confused about this, so like let me know if you have more insight on this, but she recently released an apology video on TikTok and I think on Instagram as well, addressing the situation, and Yulissa also did the same, at least on TikTok, I'm 100% sure, but so viewers and Sierra both agree that she used the slur in a 2024 Instagram story, the Botox one that I described to you, and then after she posted that, she was educated by a fan via Instagram DM and immediately removed the story and immediately removed the word from her vocabulary. However, there are screenshots floating around, including an Instagram post from 2015 where the caption included the C slur, as well as screenshots from a DM in 2023 where it seemed like a fan was educating her on the use of the C slur. Now, a lot of people have been throwing around this 2023 DM as proof that Sierra knew what she was doing when she said it again in 2024. However, I'm confused about why there was a DM in 2023 in the first place, because from what I can tell, the instances of her using that word on Instagram were in a 2015 post and in a 2024 DM. Like, why would they bring it up in a 2023? Like, was the 2023 DM because of the 2020 or the 2015
maybe like
post?
an hour.
I am not really sure. I don't know
So
if it's a real DM or not. I've also seen another 2024 DM. In one of the 2024 DMs, she was like, "Oh my bad, thanks for informing me." But in another one of the DMs, she was like, "Oh, thankfully that's not how I used it," which is kind of like, that wasn't really her taking accountability and like getting informed. So, anyways, people were really mad at her for that. Oh, another thing that was that made people mad was because of the way that Love Island season 6, at least for USA, was pretty major. Like, there were a lot of people talking about it on TikTok. And I don't know how long this has been going on, but so when you go on Love Island, you like, bam, get instant fame. Like, even if you were on the show for a little amount of time Jalen was, like, he has 1 million plus followers on TikTok now. Like, it can change your life. And so when people like know that they're going to go on Love Island, they know that this is a huge opportunity. So some people designate one or a few of their friends to manage their social media accounts while they're gone, because like I've said before, the Islanders don't have access to their phones, social media, anything like that. The friend that was managing Sierra's Instagram, or maybe TikTok, or just like all of her socials, she came on and said, so she was making fun of all the people saying like, she's gonna be so embarrassed, like Sierra's gonna be so embarrassed when she sees this. And then the friend was like, when she hits 1 million followers in the next 5 days, do you think she's gonna feel embarrassed? Sierra then proceeded to lose hundreds of thousands of followers. She did not, in fact, hit 1 million. It was a bi-sister situation all over again. Her following has since bounced back a bit. I mean, like, the lowest I've seen was somewhere in the 600,000 range, and now she's like in the 700,000 range. So, but we have a bunch of people claiming that Shelly and Sierra have been buying followers, like all of this messy shit. Do I think it's a little weird that she wore a shirt that said empathy on it in her apology video? Yes. Yeah, I definitely honestly feel like she has gotten enough backlash by this point. Anyways, in the next episode, the only explanation we get from the narrator was that Sierra has left the villa due to a personal situation. Although if you're on social media, you know damn well what the personal situation was. However, back to the voter ranking challenge. So all of that was the background necessary for you to fully understand and the weight of these rankings and the reasoning behind these rankings. First, they had the Islanders rank who they thought America would pick. The first category was most to least genuine, and from the most to the least, they picked Elan, TJ, Ace, Nick, Brian, Pepe, Austin, Chris, Taylor, and then Zach. And the voters, America actually picked Pepe, Chris, Zach, Nick, Elan, Brian, TJ, Austin, Ace, and Taylor. So we will see a couple of things. Actually, you know what? I'm just going to go through all of the rankings, and then we'll analyze what they mean afterwards. So, then again, most to least boyfriend material. The Islanders picked Ace, Pepe, Nick, Elan, TJ, Chris, Taylor, Brian, Zach, and then Austin. And then the voters actually picked Pepe, Chris, Nick, Elan, Zach, Brian, TJ, Ace, Austin, and then Taylor. From most to least trustworthy for the girls, the Islanders ranked Jaden, Shelly, Sierra, Iris, Clark, Grayson, Andrina, Amaya, Alandria, and
I was already there. And I just wanted a kiss.
Amaya, Iris, Alandria, Grayson, Huda, Sierra, Jaden, Shelly, Andrina, and then Clark. And then the girls from most to least genuine, the Islanders picked Alandria, Amaya, Shelly, Sierra, Iris, Grayson, Clark, Jaden, Andrina. And then the voters, America, actually picked Amaya, Iris, Alandria, Grayson, Huda, Jaden, Sierra, Andrina, Shelly, and then Clark. And then they had one final ranking, which was the couples together, who people like most to least wanted to go on vacation with. The Islanders picked Amaya and Zach, then Ace and Shelly, then Sierra and Nick, then Iris and TJ, then Pepe and Grayson, then Chris and Huda, then Jaden and Austin, then Andrina and Brian, and then Taylor and Clark. And the voters picked Amaya and Zach, then Sierra and Nick, then Grayson and Pepe, then Huda and Chris, then Iris and TJ, then Jaden and Austin, then Andrina and Brian, then Shelly and Ace, and then finally Taylor and Clark. So one thing that you may or may not have noticed is that Taylor and Clark were at the bottom of every single poll. For the boys, Taylor was always at the bottom. For the girls, Clark was always at the bottom. And together, they were at the bottom, the very last spot. Now, this was probably because by this point Taylor hadn't said outright that he chose Clark, but he has been making it very clear that he is Team Clark, and people were not liking that. I don't really have a problem with either Taylor or Clark, and I do find it unfair that at least like she was getting any sort of hate, because ultimately that this was Taylor's decision, and if you were mad at this new couple, then theoretically Taylor's the one you should be mad at. And another thing to note is that Ace was towards the bottom for both of the categories that he was ranked in. Ace and Shelly were second to last as a couple, and Shelly was also towards the bottom of both of the categories that she was in. And I think that is, for Shelly at least, I think that was a result of the heart rate challenge scenario, because at that point it turned the tides against Shelly, and then people started liking Huda more. And then for Ace has just not been a likable figure in the villa. I don't think it was any surprise that voters picked Pepe and Chris to be at the top. I mean, they're fan favorites. But I think people were shocked that Alandria was like top 3, pretty high up. And I think they were also surprised that Sierra wasn't like all the way down at the bottom. But one thing that also wasn't surprising was that Amaya, like, she's the people's princess. She was number 1 in every category that it was possible for her to be in. And so, yeah, those are the rankings. Those were the thoughts and feels of America. And it was definitely a bit of a wake-up call, particularly for Ace and Shelly. And Amaya definitely learned from that day on that America was behind her back, so I think that helped her a little bit. Okay, so then we have the classic America votes who their least favorite people are. So the 6 least popular Islanders were in jeopardy of leaving right after this ranking challenge.
I mean, that's
and
fine.
out of the 6, Islanders would only be able to save 1 person. Usually it's 2, but this time it was just 1. So the 6 people in jeopardy were Jaden, Grayson, Andrina, TJ, Taylor, and Austin. The Islanders voted as follows. Elan chose Grayson, I guess to explore that connection potentially. Alandria chose Austin because they're besties. Iris and Zach chose TJ. Iris is in a couple of TJ. I guess Zach was homies with TJ, I don't know. Brian and Chris chose Jaden. Brian is interested in pursuing a connection with Jaden. Chris,
including that test.
I honestly don't know. Maybe solidarity with Brian, I'm not sure. So these were the least voted people. They did in fact get kicked out. Grayson, Austin, TJ, and Jaden all left. Iris was crying up a storm because TJ left, but don't worry, expert comforter Pepe coming her way. Open arms for her to cry in. So the choice was between Andrina and Taylor. Huda, Amaya, and Shelly stood behind Andrina, girl solidarity I suppose. Clark, Pepe, Nick, and Ace stood behind Taylor. We've got the OG guys, the OG trio, obviously. Clark is in a relationship with, or in a connection with Taylor. Sierra, with the last vote, stood behind Taylor. And then after this voting episode, Sierra left. So Nick and Alandria decided to get back together, which made everyone scream, cry, throw up. Everyone was so happy, but y'all, I'm smelling something stanky, something fishy. Because did they not literally say that their kiss outside of the challenge was like a bad experience? Like they just didn't, that established that they were going to be friends. And all of a sudden, psych, like now sparks are flying. Are they trying to save their asses? Were they lying before about feeling the spark in order to like not make things messy? Who knows, but they were definitely lying at some point, right? Maya and Brian start a connection with each other. And everyone is a fan of this, considering how Brian stood up for her during the Stand on Business challenge, and Amaya's the people's princess, so obviously they're going to support whatever couple she's in. So people really like Pepe and Iris. Of course, he's going to go after the recently widowed blonde. I think they're both cool individually. I like them as a couple. I'm definitely charmed by Pepe. Can't blame Iris whatsoever. So those are the three couples, Pepe and Iris, Amaya and Brian, and Nick and Alandria, along with Shelly and Ace, Clark and Taylor, and Huda and Chris. Thus, Zach and Elan were single, had to leave the villa. Then, the next episode was a baby challenge where couples had to take care of fake babies for the day, which, hello, producers. Why are you trying to make my girl Huda crash out? You're just as bad as the viewers. And you have the audacity to go online to make, public statements and be like, guys, stop the hate on the Islanders. That's not cool. Bullying. Knock it off. Racism. Knock it off. Who set that system up? Who was the one in charge of recruiting these specific Islanders to the villa? Who was the one creating these scenarios for the Islanders to crash out and look bad? Who is the one editing and sculpting and crafting the narrative? Anyways, Amaya and Brian were chosen to get a night in the hideaway, which is basically like a private room to themselves. Not that the couples needed it in order to get down and dirty. Multiple have gotten it on in the shared bedroom, which is kind of crazy to me, but I don't know, man. Different strokes, different folks. But that, it seems kind of disrespectful and inconsiderate, but that's just me. Clark and Taylor officially get closed off, and then literally that same night that they decide that they're closed off, immediately get kicked off the island. Not a surprise, given recent public opinion about them. Do I think it was warranted? Not really, but honestly, they were my least favorite couple too. And we're getting down to the wire. Like, even if someone's your least favorite, like I don't dislike Clark and Taylor, but just I have other couples that I like more. Chris and Huda have definitely had their first hiccup, and is actually, surprise, surprise, making certain people dislike Huda yet again. The reason that they were fighting initially, like, there was some tension during the baby challenge, but honestly, I think Chris was really understanding about that, and like he knew that Huda was gonna feel some type of way because of this challenge, so I don't think it was honestly about that at all. I think he was hurt about the fact that Huda didn't want to show any sort of PDA with him and was overly concerned about how the other Islanders were perceiving them. But given how people reacted to her and Jeremiah, like, honestly, I think her concerns are warranted, but, I do think that at times she is very, like, belligerent and very
this
defensive.
Is the first time
She's
we're
definitely
seeing
not
it
the best
fully.
communicator,
Yeah.
and she definitely, I think, like, has certain double standards. Like, she expects a lot out of her partner and doesn't give them the same grace. At times, she kept cutting him off, which, as a viewer, was really frustrating. Because Huda Girl was literally like 4 times in a row.
Good fits.
Okay, so I'm
Good fits
officially
together.
all caught up with Love Island. The only episode that I haven't seen is the finale, which is coming out tonight if you are watching this right when I post it, so that's super exciting. And honestly, watching these episodes and seeing a bunch of TikTok posts have made me realize that I don't know where I stand anymore. I feel like I was giving y'all a little bit of flack because people's opinions were flip-flopping all over the place, and now I feel the same way. I don't know. So basically, here's what's happened in these last 2 episodes. Chris and Huda kind of left off on their issue, and basically the big thing is Chris is confused why Huda is okay with having sex with him in the bedroom in a room filled with other people, but not, like, sharing a quick kiss in front of everybody outside in the daylight. Like, that doesn't really make sense to him. And Huda was trying to explain, I guess, that she is a little bit traumatized from her last relationship. And the result of that disagreement was honestly, like, I can understand why people are getting, like, frustrated at Huda again, because it seems whenever there's a conflict, like, she's never the one making any sort of compromise. And I do, like, I understand how that is annoying in the long run, for sure. Like, basically the end of that disagreement was just, like, they were gonna keep continuing how they normally continue, and Huda even made a request at the end of it, and she was just like, yeah, I just need a little bit more reassurance in the morning. Amaya and Brian were also, like, scheming to try to help them figure things out. And basically, I don't really think anything's been resolved, but the topic has just kind of been dropped. Shelly and Ace became exclusive, and they were the ones chosen to go to the hideaway, which, you know, obviously happy for them. I don't think they actually, like, did the deed, though, from what I understand. But, you know, that's just the tea on that. Then we got Families Day, which at first everybody thought that they were going to be able to say hi to their families via a screen. But the surprise was the producers brought 2 members of their family. For most people, I think Alandria was the only one who had only one person show up. But 2 people from everyone's families were brought in. The couples got to meet each other's respective families. Honestly, I thought that was really sweet, really wholesome, and I think it was definitely needed in order for, I guess, the audience, because I've seen so many TikToks up until this point of people, like, not really treating the Islanders as people, and I feel like that really humanized them. Because, yeah, it's important to remember, y'all, like, these are all people that we're talking about online. They're brothers, sisters, daughters, sons. Let's chill the fuck out. The last episode that I saw, which was the episode just before the finale, was Family Day, and at the end of this episode, a couple had to leave the villa and leave it down to the final 4. And at this point, we have 5. Iris and Pepe, Shelly and Ace, Huda and Chris, Amaya and Brian, and Nick and Alandria. This is based on America's votes of who everyone's favorite couple was, so the couple with the least amount of votes was kicked off. And the couple that was kicked off was Shelly and Ace. I don't know who I would have wanted to go, but I was sad that it ended up being Ace and Shelly because, you know, I've had my disagreements with, you know, certain things that Shelly did or certain things that Ace did, but at the end of the day, like, I really like them together, and by this point I feel like the hate that they've been receiving online has been like way too much, and that basically means the final 4 couples are Nick and Alandria, Chris and Huda, Iris and Pepe, and Amaya and Brian. Basically, I believe the way that the finale works is America votes who their favorite couple is. Whoever that couple is, they each receive a letter, and one letter is nothing, and the other letter is $100,000. So they open each person within that couple opens the letter at the same time. One of them will get the $100K, and then one of them will have the opportunity to decide whether to take all of the money themselves or split it amongst the couple. My prediction is that Amaya and Brian are going to win it all and be America's favorite, and they're going to split the $100K. I didn't make it in time to actually participate in the vote, but my vote would also be for Amaya and Brian as well. Amaya's the people's princess. I think that America is 100% behind her. And I actually really like them together. I think that even though it's a newer relationship, all of these arguably are a slightly newer relationship. I don't know, I just really like seeing them together. I think that they have a nice connection, and I think that it was really, really sweet. Out of all of the families on Family Day, I really liked Amaya and Brian's family reunion the most. Iris and Pepe being in the final 4 was a little bit surprising to me, but I do think the people like Pepe and Iris individually, and I will say it. Out of all the guys on this season, I have a crush on 2 people. Chris is my number 1 and Pepe is my number 2. Very charmed by the both of them. Chris and Huda, I think that they've become a staple of the season at this point. Where they're at in their relationship, I don't really know because at the very end of this last episode, everybody went around saying their favorite moments, and Chris did not even mention Huda in his favorite moments, so I think that, I don't know, maybe they just added that clip in for drama or to make us, like, unsure. I don't really know. I think it's a hard thing to say. I think Huda has shown that she's got some issues to work on, and she knows that, and we've definitely seen a lot of growth throughout the show. But I do think, like, in terms of making compromises and resolving conflicts in these relationships, I do think that it's a little unfair that she's never really the one who has to make those compromises. And also, like, some of her behavior on the show has been just really not good. I understand the public opinion being so split on her because, on the one hand, she's done a bunch of bad things, but on the other, I feel like you can tell from watching her throughout this whole show that she doesn't have ill intentions, and I think that that's why people are willing to forgive her. Shelly and Ace, I've disagreed with the whole love bombing, whole Ace situation, and like certain points I was kind of annoyed by him, but at the end of the day, like, I don't really have a problem with him, I like him. And Shelly, the same thing with the whole mean girls narrative. Like, yes, I did disagree with her in certain situations with the heart rate challenge or maybe even the stand on business challenge, but I also still really like her. And I am sad to see them go, especially since they've been here since day one, and you can see the chemistry that they've had since day one. Nick and Alandria, I am skeptical of how, truthful their relationship is. I do think that Nick has been attracted to her since day one, but by this point, I don't know how much they're feeding into it due to the fact that they, it's close to the end and they want to make it to the end. I don't really know if I believe the whole friends to lovers thing, but maybe that there's some truth to it. Again, I've disagreed with some of the things that Alandria has done, but I do like her. Nick, I do get annoyed with him, I will say, I really do, but at the end of the day, I don't hate him. One of the things that apparently they usually do in Love Island, but they didn't this year, was they have an episode called Movie Night, where the Islanders get to see footage that they haven't seen before, maybe people shit-talking behind their back and stuff, and that's supposed to be all dramatic, but they didn't do that this year, and I think some people were disappointed about that. And I think it was really sad that Shelly and Ace, they got to go to the hideaway, they just became exclusive, and then the next day they were voted off the island. It was very much giving Taylor and Clark, and I guess it is what it is. The people have spoken. One TikTok that I saw recently was that the reason why Ace was so anti-Jeremiah was because he wanted Huda, and I didn't really see that to be the case in the show. However, people have been saying that Ace was all up in Huda's legs way before the show, so that is definitely interesting. Another thing that I wanted to mention of things that I've been seeing recently is that there have been some developments regarding TJ, Austin, and Nick. Nick, he made this post about a cat at the vet or something on a table, and one of the hashtags that he used in this TikTok was hashtag Chinese, so racism there. People were not too happy about finding that post. In terms of Austin and Ulissa, on TikTok, apparently a bunch of those reposts have been pro-Trump reposts, so if you've been seeing hate towards them on TikTok, that's why. People have been saying that some of Austin's reposts have been really weird, representing very MAGA ideologies. And then people have been saying that TJ, I've seen 50-50 people, some of the TikToks TJ has posted have been funny, but also, apparently at one point he followed Andrew Tate, but TJ denied even supporting him at all, but apparently his friend is a Tate supporter. Apparently TJ also is following or was following at one point Tory Lanez. I didn't know who that was, but apparently he shot Megan Thee Stallion in the foot. I don't know what the fuck is happening anymore, guys. So that's weird, especially when Megan Thee Stallion was the one who introduced TJ to the villa. So that's just catching you up on the TikTok situation that's been happening. So yeah, my experience watching Love Island for the first time was definitely really interesting. By the end of it, honestly, it was making me happy to see the friendships that have formed over this past month. All of the tea has been crazy. The social media scene has been crazy. Also, it's crazy how people can go into this show for one day and come out with 1 million followers. People who have been cast in the show on Instagram, they maybe had 2,000 followers. I think Ace had hundreds of thousands of followers before coming in, so it kind of varies. People were either had 0 or hundreds of thousands. A lot of them in between maybe had 10, 20K. But then they come out of it, pretty much all of them, if they've been a regular, with hundreds of thousands of followers, if not millions. So being on the show is legitimately life-changing, no matter how much screen time you get. And it's also interesting to see this season in light of the previous season, which was apparently it really elevated Love Island USA to a different level. And initially, actually, people were wondering, in the midst of the success of Love Island Season 6, are people who are currently on the show here for the right reasons? Are they trying to game the system? What are their true intentions? Is this just a game to them? Are they being performative? Are they doing things to try and make TikTok edits? I don't know. Probably, maybe subconsciously if they're online, but I don't know. Hopefully, if you haven't seen anything about Love Island at all, this wasn't too confusing to follow. Let me know what your thoughts and opinions are on the matter, because honestly, at the end of the day, I'm really trying not to be too harsh on these people. I mean, I can't imagine, being sleep deprived in bikinis every day, sweaty, bug infested, and having cameras on me 24/7, being mic'd up 24/7, not knowing what day it is, not knowing what time it is, being completely cut off from the outside world. Obviously, the conditions that they're in, they're trying to instigate drama. I mean, like, these people are tired and angry. Of course some shit is gonna go down. Of course they're gonna say things they don't mean. So I'm trying to give people some grace here. Anyways, yeah, that's the tea. I hope you enjoyed. It's been fun as always, and I will talk to y'all later. Bye. Trisha Paytas is a name that a lot of people will recognize. Depending on what you've heard about her, though, you'll probably either love her or hate her. Because that's really all it takes, knowing one detail about her to send you, like, straight into one of either of those categories. My goal in making this video is to give you an understanding of why she's so polarizing. Personally, the more that I learned about her, the more conflicted I've become. We'll touch on the elements people love about her, what she's known for, her career. I'll also get into the many controversies that she's gotten herself into, and things she's done in the past which have prompted a lot of hatred towards her. What I'm not gonna do is tell you how to feel about her. You're gonna have to do that yourself, babes. Or, more likely, you're probably already going to have an opinion on her coming into this. After watching this, though, I am curious to see what y'all are gonna say. So let's talk about Trisha. People have joked about her living so many different lives because if you take one look at her resume, you'll see why. Here's a list, and this isn't even everything, like, this isn't all-encompassing. She was in an episode of Modern Family, America's Got Talent, Dr. Phil, Ellen, Big Brother, My Strange Addiction, was in music videos for Eminem, Amy Winehouse, All American Rejects, Katy Perry, started a YouTube career, became involved with the Vlog Squad, Shane Dawson, released music and went on tour for it, produced her own elaborate music videos, has had drama with pretty much everyone under the sun, tried and failed to break the record for the world's fastest talker, is extremely successful on OnlyFans, has written several books, co-hosted several podcasts, got married, had 2 kids, and recently was on SNL and has an upcoming Broadway debut, all by the age of 36 years old. That's fucking crazy! Now, those are just the broad strokes. Ultimately, she's known for being an incredibly entertaining person. She's recreated Troy Bolton's iconic Bet On It music video, attempted to cook scrambled eggs for 10 minutes before realizing the stove wasn't on, has cried on the kitchen floor more times than you could count, made a song called I Love You Jesus, made this TikTok completely unprompted, named one daughter Malibu Barbie and the other Elvis. She isn't afraid to do anything and lives her life uninhibitedly. People also relate to her, whether that be because of her extravagance or vulnerability or just overall growth and journey. She's also super funny, whether that's intentional or not, people find debatable. But before we dive a little bit deeper, I want to talk to y'all about the sponsor of today's video. Thank you so much to Laylo for sponsoring today's video. Laylo represents the pinnacle of luxury in the sexual wellness industry. They use state-of-the-art technology so you can experience new heights of pleasure like never before. Take, for example, my friend, the best-selling Enigma Double Sonic. It has a sleek, premium design that comes in 2 stylish colorways. Now, it's especially designed to target the A spot. I didn't even know there was a spot you could stimulate before the Enigma, but I think that's the great thing about it. You get to learn more about yourself and your body by accessing those hard-to-reach locations with its unique sonic tip and insertable tail. You can even connect it to an app. That's right, vibrators have got Bluetooth. By doing so, you can further customize your experience, like only using one motor, although you do have the option of using 2, double the fun, double the pleasure. And it also unlocks 2 additional modes of vibration. Laylo is kicking off the holiday season with festive cheer this year, with incredible Christmas discounts starting now. However, y'all are special, which is why you're getting an additional 10% off if you use my discount code AmandaLaylo10. Hurry to my link below because products like the Enigma Double Sonic are discounted for the first time ever, so you definitely don't want to miss out. Thank you so much again to Laylo for sponsoring this video. Now let's get back to it. Now, let's delve a little deeper because you can't talk about Trisha's career without talking about how she got there. The thing about Trisha is that for us as people who don't know her personally, it's almost impossible to get a read on her character because she has a history of lying. There is confirmed evidence of that through self-contradictions documented from her own videos on her YouTube channel, as well as her admitting herself that she is a liar. She has lied a lot before in the past. She can also be very hypocritical. She has criticized people for doing things that she's done herself. She's also admitted to putting up a front online, which everybody does, whether it be online or not. And I actually have a distinct memory of Hank Green calling her out on this and saying that Trisha puts on an act, or not even calling her out, but just like informing the public that this is an act. And he got a lot of shit for that back in the day, which is crazy. But also she's such an enigma because at times after you see a lot of her content, there are bits and pieces where you can be like, okay, I can see how she could be acting, but at the same time, it feels like it's not an act. So it's just, I don't know what to do. I don't know how to feel. Her behavior is complicated, and there's so much speculation about why she acts the way she does. Some think she's calculating and manipulative, pursuing attention no matter the cost. Some people think she's like a chameleon, staying relevant by shifting who she is and how she acts to fit whatever's most popular. Others think that she's a person genuinely struggling with mental health, someone who has made a lot of mistakes, but ultimately at her core is a good person trying to do better. The main thing that I wonder about is her degree of self-awareness. Lying is a conscious act, being witty is a conscious act, so, those would make the argument that everything she's doing is a conscious decision. But there are a whole bunch of other things she does that I'm not sure about. For example, she has stated in some of her older videos that she has a big imagination and a history of embellishing stories. So is it possible that she's gotten to points where she has trouble distinguishing reality from what she imagined in her mind? Memory is also a fickle thing. If you're directly contradicting yourself, and there's a record of that because, in her case, she has a decade plus worth record of herself by posting her own videos. That doesn't necessarily mean you're lying, though. If you're genuinely misremembering something, like potentially she just got something wrong. If you say something that isn't true, but genuinely believe in what you're saying, does that make it a lie? And if you don't know what I mean by that, for example, let's say a person believes the earth is flat, and they say the earth is flat. If you hook them up to a lie detector, it would probably say that they're telling the truth, but that in itself isn't the truth. I definitely was not following Trisha from, at the beginning when she first started posting on YouTube, or even before that. When she first started posting on YouTube, I was literally like 4. But my initial perception of Trisha when I first was really introduced to her was that she seemed impressionable. She seems to have patterns of idolization, whether that be a person or a movie or an aesthetic. She is capable of embracing something without fully understanding what it means. At least that's what it seems, but maybe I'm wrong. Again, it's hard to say because I don't really know if that's an act or not. But I've been talking about all this stuff very generally, and if you don't really know who she is, you might be kind of lost. So let's go through specific instances of her behavior, and then you can make your own judgments. One thing that she gets a lot of hate for is for her reputation of being a troll. And that is because she's posted videos on her YouTube channel in the past, such as why she's voting for Mitt Romney, questioning whether dogs have brains, and arguing that Hitler wasn't that bad.
I am fully supportive of Mitt Romney, and there are a few reasons why. So basically, one, Mitt Romney is super hot.
These specific videos, she has later admitted to be rage bait, essentially, like just saying whatever she thinks will get a rise out of people. Now, these videos were posted 10 years ago, but there's evidence of her doing similar things, albeit less extreme, a few years ago, when she mentioned the possibility of gravity not being real.
We actually don't need it.
What do you mean that we don't need gravity?
What if it was never invented?
Invented by who?
Sir Isaac Newton.
And saying that she didn't know what the cost was. Mind you, 10 years ago, remember that video about Hitler I just mentioned? She discussed the Holocaust in that video, so there's absolutely no way that what she was saying a few years ago could be true. Unless she had an extremely terrible memory, but that probably wasn't the case.
I low-key got really sad about the Holocaust this weekend. Let me show you what actually happened, and I started crying.
You just found out about the
I
Holocaust?
have no idea.
Now, obviously, I'm sure Trisha is well aware, but people are well aware that these types of extreme claims get a reaction because they're absurd. But back in the day, she took it a step further. Earlier on YouTube, when being racist and doing character work was all the rage, she was right there with it. I don't think there's a demographic left that hasn't been offended by Trisha Paytas at some point. She created a character, Trishy, who was supposed to be this Japanese pop star, and she did an accent to accompany it and everything. She has rapped the N-word. She made a song about fetishizing black men entitled Jungle Fever, and has made multiple anti-Semitic claims, and by multiple I mean quite a lot.
But Jew is a derogative.
No.
My Jew lunch?
I think it's the way you say it. I was reading oh, my Jew lunch.
I can tell you with 100% certainty you cannot say that. It's offensive.
Moses said it was fine, and he is from Israel and had a bar mitzvah, so.
That is especially well documented on the Frenemies podcast.
I thought he was a full Jew, and then he's actually, my mom's only Jewish. I'm
That's full Jew.
Okay, but his dad's Catholic. I want.
You want Jewish purity.
I need, That's what I'm trying to get.
You gotta stop, bro. It's weird how you fetishize
It's
Jewish
not
people.
fetishizing.
It
It's
is
wanting
totally
to be
is.
in the upper echelon of the world. I want to
Upper
preach Israel.
echelon.
Obviously, these things are harmful, but I think people have a hard time judging her behavior because it's not totally clear if she's genuinely ignorant or is consciously hiding behind a veil of ignorance. And I think an example of this is when she was in the process of exploring her identity and pronouns, and in a video she posted to her YouTube channel, she came out as a transgender man, specifically a gay man, despite simultaneously saying that she felt completely aligned with her gender assigned at birth. And then the reasoning that she gave for this was because she feels attracted to gay men and heavily related to the drag queen aspect of physical representation. Naturally, people were split on this. To some, it sounded like someone who had the spirit, like you got the spirit, but you're just deeply, deeply confused. To others, because she got everything about gender identity and sexual orientation to be so mixed up, they thought that it had to be rage bait. Like, there was no way that someone could be this confused about the subject. She later retracted her earlier statement about being transgender, and then actually came out as non-binary after seeing the responses and realizing that she didn't have the vocabulary to accurately describe, how she was feeling. She currently uses she/they pronouns, by the way. I've seen people point out at one point she identified as a chicken nugget.
When you feel like a chicken nugget, you feel like not delicious. Well, you feel delicious, but you also feel like fried.
And this comes into conversation whenever people are talking about, this whole era of her exploring her identity in this specific situation. But I think that the chicken nugget thing is missing a bit of context when you throw it into this mix, because she wasn't saying that she's a chicken nugget in a sense of like someone mocking people. It's not in a snarky like, oh, if you can identify as anything, then I'm going to be a chicken nugget type of thing. She was describing how she felt after a breakup, like years before this whole her coming out as transgender thing even happened. So that's the tea on that. Another point of contention has been her mental health struggles. She shared that she's been diagnosed with borderline personality disorder. Also, this kind of unrelated, I'm not really sure, but she's also said that she's struggled with drug addiction to prescription pills, to be exact. In a similar vein to coming out as transgender, before fully being informed, she made videos and posted them to her YouTube channel about having both dissociative identity disorder and schizophrenia. I believe those were both self-diagnoses, although I have also seen other people say that she was like misdiagnosed with them during, the journey and process of being diagnosed with borderline. But I'm, assuming those were self-diagnoses because, other people have also speculated that what she said about the process of being diagnosed with schizophrenia, it seems like the process went way quicker than it would have normally taken. I'm not really sure, like there's a lot of speculation about her and, the various mental health things that she said she's been diagnosed with, but the predominating theory is that these are self-diagnoses, and with dissociative identity disorder, she must have seen symptoms that have resonated with her and then jumped to the conclusion that she had it, which ended up not being true. And then similarly with schizophrenia, she was prescribed antipsychotics and assumed that that would only be the case if she had schizophrenia, which is not true. You can be prescribed antipsychotics without, having schizophrenia, being schizophrenic.
I understand you had a schizophrenia diagnosis at one time. That is not what you have. But I could see how if you have these kinds of symptoms, somebody might think that.
Well, they put me on medication for schizophrenia. I don't know, like if I have it, but that's what I'm on right now. And it's like this new. It's like I don't know.
No. What was borderline was they were considering these patients borderline psychotic. And so there were people that were having psychotic symptoms, but were not schizophrenic.
That's so interesting, because I went, because my therapist can't give me medication, so I went to a psychiatrist, and it was just 2 or 3 meetings, and they were like, oh, you should be on this medication, and so it's helped with it.
But regardless, it's a really irresponsible thing to do to go online and talk about something that you've self-diagnosed yourself with to millions of people, your millions of followers, which is why some think that this is yet another example of her, doing some sort of rage bait. However, again, other people are like, well, she could also be genuinely super misinformed on the matter and like been genuinely confused. But to a certain point, you can be confused and you can be, struggling with this, but ultimately, is it an irresponsible thing to do to post all of these, thoughts to the internet without being fully informed, especially when you have millions of followers? Yes. I think that that's definitely something that you would hold her accountable for, while also being sympathetic to her being confused and like trying to figure out bits about her identity and mental health. And also, like, just to reiterate, being ignorant is not a valid excuse for her behavior in these cases, but it does affect the light that people view her in. And another issue that comes up is whether or not she uses her mental health as an excuse for her behavior. And I honestly struggle a little bit with this concept even in reality, let alone with people on the internet. That's a whole other ordeal. But so here's my question to you guys. So having a mental or personality disorder does affect the way that someone behaves, right? But I know people should also be held accountable for their actions, and it's not an excuse. As an empath, no kidding. Like, on a basic human level, these disorders are something that you're born with, right? And they're perhaps even further abated by environmental factors like childhood trauma. And it does make me sad when a person is struggling with these things that they didn't have any control over. But I don't know if that's, you know, a way of me trying to excuse the behavior, but I don't know. Yes, regardless, people should still be held accountable, but it does make me feel pretty sad. Now, I want to talk a little bit about the relationships that she's had in her life, and not romantic, just like relationships in general. Growing up, Trisha lived in Illinois, but spent a lot of time in California as well. Because her parents were divorced, her mom lived in Illinois, her dad lived in California, and her childhood seemed a little bit tumultuous with the divorce. Her mom also got several more divorces after that, and there were issues with school, you know, body shaming, people were bullying her. Obviously, you know, with a divorce, that's hard on everyone, especially if you're a child, and then being bullied at school on top of that, that's another double homicide. And so she had to navigate her parents living on almost opposite sides of the country, and then on top of that, like I mentioned, Trisha's mom had a lot of different, you know, boyfriends, husbands, exes, ex-husbands, but one guy in particular seemed really disgusting. So, Trisha, in one of her old videos, referred to him and seemed to be harrowed by the experiences that involved him, and she didn't go into a lot of detail about it. But then there was a clip of her mom, so her mom was talking to the camera, and she posted this video of herself on her own YouTube channel, which I don't think exists anymore, but she was talking about one of the guys that she was involved with. I don't know if this guy is the same guy Trisha was referring to when she was talking about her harrowing experiences, but her mom said that this guy drank so much he fell into one of my daughter's beds, and then she didn't want her children to be taken away by Child Protective Services, so she told him to stop, and he said, "I can't stop." You, as a parent, cannot knowingly endanger your child like that. That's despicable. But, you know, although Trisha in general speaks highly of her family, both her mom and her dad and her siblings, I think, and still seems close to her mom and her sister. So much so, actually, that she involves them in her OnlyFans career. I don't know to what extent, I don't know if that's still going on, but it is confirmed that she posted a video to her OnlyFans during, you know, this was a few years ago, in which her and her sister wrestled each other in bikinis.
Your sister wrestled you in a bikini and J-Lo produced a beat-off while your mom refereed.
Yeah.
Some kinks should be shamed.
No, that's
How about like
wrong.
pedophilia? Can we kink shame pedophiles?
That's not a king. That's
Why?
an actual crime.
Incest is a crime.
Okay, but that's not.
So there's that.
So are you comfortable with people beating off to you and your whole family? That seems odd.
Yeah, why? I feel like that's a natural thing.
I find it funny because you're like,
I did an OnlyFans. Remember when I did the OnlyFans video with you guys in the background?
So I was editing this video and I was finding this clip and I saw this and I was like, wait a damn minute. I did remember reading somewhere that this happened. Her random wardrobe and the fact that she says it so casually, but like, that's such a violation. Oh my god.
Trisha has always claimed to be enamored with fame and the Hollywood lifestyle, so at the first chance she got, she went to pursue that. She was on all of those TV shows that I mentioned earlier, but to support herself, she was also a stripper. She got involved with some pretty scummy men around this time. She dated actor Anthony Michael Hall, who was 20 years older than her. She then dated actor Roger Bart, who was 26 years older than her. And I know these like crossovers are crazy, like Roger Bart, hello. She said that they both cheated on her and both didn't treat her right. She then dated dancer Sean Vanderwilt.
Wait, also side note, this isn't the guy she dated, but look at how fun this is. Like, I didn't realize I was looking up, like, you know, bits about her dancing, and then this came up, And she was like a freaking dancer. Look how cool that is.
Until someone showed her Sean like at a club with another man, and then she then went online, posted a video saying he cheated on her with this man, consequently outing him. Also, did you know she dated Avi from Pentatonics? She was then in a very public relationship with Jason Nash. Now, Jason is the ex I probably know the most about, just like without even, just from the top of my head before making this video. So around 2015, 2016, here's a little bit of the lore. There was this really popular YouTuber named David Dobrik, and I'm sure you probably have heard of him at least once. He was known for making these 4-minute, 20-second vlogs of him and his friends, aka the Vlog Squad, and they would get into all sorts of crazy shenanigans. Me personally, I was never a fan of the Vlog Squad, partly because I feel like I wasn't like actually conscious at this time. I did not know what was going on. I didn't know how to follow the trends. I didn't know really what was going on the internet at all. I had a friend who liked the Vlog Squad, and when she showed me a video, I did not like it. Partly because the vibes of watching Vlog Squad videos to me felt like watching some sort of hazing ritual. Like, there was just too much going on. I felt anxious just watching it. I can't even imagine participating in any one of the videos. But anyway, there have been a lot of times where David has endangered the lives of his friends and also complete strangers that have participated in his vlogs, violated the privacy of everyone involved as well, created a pretty toxic environment where he was at the top and everyone was seemingly like sucking up to him to get more screen time. And you know, perhaps the person who sucked up to David the most was actually the guy that Trisha dated, Jason, who is 23 years David's senior. So him being significantly older than a lot of the Vlog Squad members did like strike people as a little bit weird because, you know, this man has children and yet he's like frolicking around with these 21-year-olds, making passes at Tana Mojo, who was super young at the time. That's a whole other thing. But because Jason was a member of the Vlog Squad, there is some documentation of him and Trisha's relationship. People have called out Jason because of these clips for fat shaming her. She also called him out later on about the fact that he didn't respect her boundaries about what she wanted to reveal to the public about their relationship to make David happy or for the sake of better content. For example, there was actually one scenario where David and Jason were playing a prank on Trisha where David was hiding in the bathroom of Jason and Trisha's hotel room, I think it was. But Jason apparently forgot that David was even there in the bathroom. So him and Trisha, they started getting intimate, and when Trisha was fully naked, mind you, went into the bathroom.
How's her lunch?
She was scared shitless by David, who was in there recording the entire time. Jason nowadays is seen as a pretty pathetic figure on the internet. He could be seen on TikTok Live begging for donations.
Come on,
A
guys.
little bit.
Gotta get something bigger than that. We need a
Just did
dino.
all the regular.
Artificial Haunted Beauty.
So now the next is
Hey
going to be
Jason, when will...
ready.
Not adding any sort of quality creative content into the world. I believe he was also at the most recent VidCon. Why? I could not tell you. The breakup was hard on Trisha. I mean, all of the breakups were hard on Trisha, which is
You can use the
natural. I
the
mean,
white
breakups are hard
sponges.
for everybody.
Oh, the
But
white sponges?
shortly thereafter, she
Okay, I
was
just wiped it off
hospitalized,
and
I
all
believe,
came
for a combination of
Yeah,
things.
for the
I think she
paper
was
towel?
mixing
Oh.
drugs
With
and
like a paper
alcohol,
towel?
and also having some sort of
I
panic
used
attack
the towel
during
that we
the
used for
time.
the coffee.
Oh yeah, the
But,
black
you know,
one? Okay.
relatively,
Is
this
that
was
okay?
pretty
Yeah, that's
close
okay.
to when her and Jason cut things off publicly. And I know that it wasn't a clean break. There was, like, he was kind of stringing her along a little bit
Yeah,
after
you're
that.
right. It comes up super
But
easy.
when Jason showed up to the hospital, he didn't show up by himself. Oh no. He brought David and a camera. What the fuck? But then, after that whole ordeal, she got together with Moses, and she eventually ended up marrying this man, having 2 kids with him, so this is who she's currently still with. So now, I need to give y'all some context with that, and I need to discuss frenemies. Now, I've already made a whole ass other video about frenemies, but here's a rundown. So there's this guy named Ethan Klein, and he's the face of the H3 podcast, and basically he asked Trisha to co-host a podcast called Frenemies with him. Just prior to the release of the first episode of Frenemies, he did a little show with Trisha, where she was like essentially a bachelorette, and she had all these guys, and you know how the bachelorette works, it's one girl, bunch of guys vying to be her #1 pick, and a person who was involved with that show was Moses. Now Moses is Ethan's brother-in-law. So Ethan, his wife's name is Ela, and she works with him on the podcast, but also like helps him, or she I think runs the whole merch side of things with their Teddy Fresh clothing line. But anyway, that's a side tangent. Ela and Moses are siblings, brother and sister. So they just started dating, Moses and Trisha, at around the time that Frenemies started. And Frenemies is what really thrust Trisha back into mainstream popularity. It was actually my first real introduction to her, as I'm sure it was for a lot of people. Frenemies had 39 episodes in total, which was a lot longer than people thought it would be, considering there were multiple fights. It was super messy. I mean, Trisha is known to have drama with pretty much everybody. And also, like, it gets even messier because keep in mind, family is involved at this point. Trisha literally attended Ethan's Rosh Hashanah celebration. Like, she was meeting the family, obviously, because, you know, they're connected. Their children are literally cousins. So, anyways, during this podcast, was when the Vlog Squad drama was brought up again, and then Trisha brought to light how David enabled toxic and harmful environments, and they discussed what happened to various members, like how her ex, Jason, SA'd another member of the group named Seth, how David was responsible for a near-death experience of one of the members, Jeff, exposed during Dom, and this is all beside the point, but another thing that Trisha mentioned during these podcast episodes was her experiences getting SA'd by teachers growing up, when she was in middle school specifically. So this gets into a kind of complicated side tangent, and I didn't even realize, despite me watching Frenemies, and I was there in the moment, I really wasn't totally up to date on all the drama that was happening outside of the show. And that's one thing that I definitely missed, and I wonder just how many people are in the same boat. I stumbled across this video series created by a YouTuber named Mysterious. Now, little did I know, the lore with Mysterious runs deep. A lot of details that I've gotten about Trisha's early childhood are from Mysterious's videos, but I've tried really hard to focus on the primary source. Mysterious compiled like the primary sources in their videos because she has a lot of receipts in terms of Trisha's own videos and quotes from Trisha's books. But basically, Mysterious's main objective was to expose how Trisha is a pathological liar and was speculating about why she does that. And she was showing clips of Trisha from like 10 years ago where she talked about how she was bullied in school for, you know, her weight, and she had all these crushes on her teachers, only to fast forward to Frenemies where she's saying the complete opposite and how she wasn't bullied in school and didn't have crushes on her teachers. No, they actually SA'd her. And then Trisha, in a now deleted episode of Frenemies, or unlisted maybe, episode 17, talked about a situation where a teacher SA'd her and was eventually arrested for having CP on his computer, and she names the teacher explicitly. And I think in a follow-up TikTok tells people to look him up. Mysterious brought up that this man that Trisha named was never arrested, was supposedly a well-respected man in the community, and is now in fact dead. So Ethan took down the video since what Trisha said about him being arrested wasn't accurate, and so he wasn't sure if any of it was accurate, I guess. However, I then watched another video which said that this very YouTuber, Mysterious, is extremely anti-Trisha. Like, she has an anti-Trisha agenda because, here's the kicker, she's a major Shane Dawson stan. And so we'll get into that in a second, but this other YouTuber named Shane Dawson, who was canceled majorly in like 2020, they used to be friends and then they had a falling out, and then ever since they had a falling out, I guess Mysterious had some sort of vendetta against Trisha or anyone who wasn't on Team Shane anymore. And also apparently like there were certain screenshots that Mysterious manipulated to like fit whatever narrative that she was trying to weave, and also has a history of victim blaming. And so I was completely caught off guard because literally I was looking at Mysterious' videos and being like, oh wow, this seems reasonable, but then I saw this other video and I was like, oh shit, maybe I should think a little bit more critically. I don't know what to believe anymore. But so this other YouTube video that I watched is from Dramatology, and she says that even though Trisha is wrong about the guy being arrested, I mean clearly there's no history of the arrest and he's dead now, but that still doesn't mean that he didn't SA her. And in fact, there was another girl named Morgan who came around on Twitter during this time when episode 17 was being removed, who seemed to be from the same town, went to the same school as Trisha, is the daughter of the chief of police, and people are saying that she is who she claims to be because she essentially like had to dox herself to get this information to the public. So she was talking about how this guy was knowingly like creepy around girls and was actually potentially fired for watching something inappropriate in the classroom. Not arrested, but fired. So that's where the discrepancy comes in. And so like to this day I feel like I still really truly we don't really know what happened, but Mysterious was all like, well, Trisha has made allegations in the past that are most likely not true, and so how are we supposed to know when she's lying and when she's telling the truth? Because she made a TikTok, made a TikTok talking about how she peed her pants during a theater rehearsal, and the teacher demanded that she get down and lick the puddle of her own piss. And in order to avoid doing that, she had to like escape out of a back window or something. And so there's that to consider, I guess. But then, also, don't you have to treat allegations on a case-by-case basis? I mean, regardless of who is making the claim. I mean, in the case of Trisha and this particular teacher who is now dead, there's also another person who's corroborating this, who seems to be who they say they are. So how can you completely discredit that when you have these two people who are saying the same thing? You know what I mean? You really do have to take it on a case-by-case basis. And even, like, I've seen firsthand how hard it can be to receive justice, I guess. Because even if you report someone to the police, and even if there are multiple people who have experienced the same thing against this one person, and even if you report them to the proper authorities, it is still very possible, and I've seen this happen, for nothing to be done. But anyways, I want to real quickly return to Shane Dawson. So, in case you're unaware, Shane Dawson was an extremely popular YouTuber known for his dark humor and conspiracy theories. Shane and Trisha were friends for quite some time, but then Shane started hanging around this guy named Jeffree Star a lot, who's a YouTuber, makeup person. If you need more lore on him, please go watch my girl Nikki's multi-part saga on this man. But anyways, Shane and Jeffree were both dabbling in makeup, they were collaborating and whatnot. And there was a situation where they were all hanging out in Vegas, I think, but Trisha ended up leaving early because they were being really mean to her, speaking negatively about her weight and how she looks and everything like that. And so that started kind of the demise of their friendship, because not long after that, Shane got majorly canceled for a myriad of things, including being racist, making inappropriate jokes about minors, bestiality allegations, and for his involvement with Dramageddon involving Tati, Jeffree, James Charles. That's a whole other thing that I'm not even going to try to get into right now, but it was a crazy time. Something interesting to note as well is that Shane's past and Trisha's are quite similar in terms of things that they can get canceled for. I mean, Shane quite literally did get canceled for that, and granted, I mean, I was actually just with a friend, and we remembered that Shane Dawson existed, and so we looked up his channel, and he's still getting millions of views on his videos. So in a sense, how can someone really truly get canceled? Because James Charles, he's also getting millions of views and whatnot, even though he should have been canceled. But it's a little bit in comparison to their prime, you know what I mean, where you can see the cancellation, but it's also, the internet has a short memory. But also, I feel like because of their major cancellation, they can never fully bounce back to where they were. It's an interesting thing to note because, like I just mentioned, so Trisha has also made inappropriate comments about minors, has also had a racist past. Like, the anti-Semitism things happened not too long ago, and she also has quite an extensive history of being on the wrong side of drama. But it does make me wonder, like, how do we get to the point where, Shane and Trisha are at such different points, like, career-wise, and have such different, they get such different treatment by the internet. But when Shane was getting canceled, Trisha still defended him until Jeffree's hairstylist flew completely off the rails and was attacking her, and through this interaction it was pretty clear that Shane was loyal to Jeffree, and then so, that really ended their friendship, and then she started bashing him, making her videos, talking about him. But Trisha, like I've alluded to, has been in her fair share of drama. When that happens, like I just mentioned, she makes a ton of YouTube videos talking about them, and now TikTok videos aimed at whoever she's beefing at, lashes out in a major way, usually exposing private details and information and conversations in the process. This has happened with a bunch of people, including Shane Dawson.
This is crazy. This is insane. This is insane.
insane. This woman is a fucking, I'm gonna wait till as many.
How do I count the ways how insane this all is? And they knew all this. They knew all this. And so Ryland's straight up just lied.
Charlie D'Amelio.
Okay, unpopular opinion, that's all, like, whatever. She's boring. Like, I can't even, like, get through
Well, she's like a young
minute.
girl.
I'm just gonna say, Trisha Paytas, like, this is not, sorry, just, you have been completely rude to me multiple times, saying she doesn't have a personality, she can't dance, she's basic. Like, you have your own problems, please stop worrying about mine. You're not a very nice person.
She's a 16-year-old
I don't
girl.
think no one expected, but she called me out for calling her boring. I'm like, girl, not everyone's gonna get what you're doing. Like, you are boring. You don't dance well.
James Charles.
I didn't want to respond to this because I didn't want to give Trisha the attention that she's clearly craving. However, I've now been accused of being a child groomer, and this is not an accusation that I'm going to take lightly. To insinuate that the relationship between Charlie and I is anything other than just a friendship is absolutely disgusting. Pack it up and work on holding yourself and your best friends around you because they and you are the problem.
A person whose name rhymes with Stabby Canna.
Put a finger down if you've been personally victimized by Gabby Hanna. She's creepily obsessed and stalking you right now, and you don't know what to do, and your hands are literally shaking because of it. 3 years ago, my boyfriend at the time told me that Gabby Hanna told me I had herpes, which I don't. To which I was like, okay, weird, but whatever. Then she kept wanting to be my friend years and years later after I became non-friends with her, non-friends. And I was like, oh my god, no, this is why I don't want to be friends with you. You have herpes. And she was like, okay, well, I still feel I'm right. I'm like, okay, cool, but I don't want to be friends with you. Then she keeps asking every mutual friend that we have that are no longer her friends that are like, hey, just talk shit about me. And I'm like, I don't know, kind of, I don't know, whatever. Because obviously I talk shit about her. And to which I was like, okay, this is kind of weird, whatever. And then she posts an Instagram story 5 months later. Trisha has herpes to all her followers.
Time
Which I
is it?
replied, Gabby Hanna, stop telling people I have herpes. I don't want to be your friend. I do talk shit about you. This is why. Stop asking my friends. To which then she makes a podcast talking about it 6 months later to promote her shitty music.
I know, too late.
And I'm like, okay, this is fucking weird. And I'm like, I didn't start it, but then I had to show that she literally started it. Then I reacted to her saying she's making a song about me because she's still obsessed with me. And I did TikTok being like, oh my god, stop obsessing over me. Then she said she wants to stay out of the drama, but now she's on Drama Alert, still talking about me and saying she doesn't want to see me get hurt or burned. And I'm literally scared for my life. And Gabby Hanna's a freak.
Ethan Klein. Ela Klein.
She was saying how Hila doesn't like her.
Ela said, don't talk about me on the podcast. All I said was just shut up again. He's like, we can't mention Ela. She doesn't want to be talked about. Oh, she's too good for a fucking podcast. Even though we were talked about, they never once insulted me at the beginning of the break. She has a fucking podcast. I brought life to the fucking Nature channel, but oh, Ela's too fucking good to even mention her name. I said nothing bad. I said like, oh, whichever as a guest or whatever. Like, I don't even mention Ela. She doesn't want to be talked about.
Colleen Ballinger. Actually, let me explain the tea on Colleen, aka Miranda Sings. So Colleen was exposed for having inappropriate interactions with fans who were minors, specifically being like in group chats with them, talking about her sex life and other mature content that she is like a 30-something-year-old woman should not have been talking about to minors. And so she then apologized for this through a ukulele song, The Toxic Gossip Train. You just had to be there. Trisha and Colleen had been friends and they had a podcast together, which ended when Colleen was exposed yet again for saying nasty things in a group chat about Trisha, this time behind her back, about her weight and such, which is a really awful pattern to witness despite whatever you may think about Trisha. Like, so many people Trisha has associated with at one point have made fun of her for something that she has expressed to be really insecure about, because this is something that she would get made fun of for in school, like as a child, but now it still haunts her to this day with frickin' Colleen and Shane Dawson and even Ethan Klein poking fun at her at one point. So, anyway, all that being said, now we finally get to Moses. Of all the things I've mentioned about Trisha's problematic behavior, maybe you've already heard something at this point that's made you uncomfortable supporting her, and I understand that, but for me, this situation is the most difficult to look past. So, Trisha has said in a Rolling Stone interview that when she and Moses met, she was a mess.
Well, I just gotta do all the.
So many times high and
Let me
stayed naked on his porch, threatened to kill
So that's
herself.
30,
There was a TikTok that she
60.
and Moses have made together, like later when they're, you know, pretty well into their relationship. And it was one of those put a finger
These
down,
ones are gonna be in
toxic,
red.
partner edition.
Put a finger down if they wouldn't let you hang out with the opposite sex. Put a finger
Oh.
down if they wouldn't let you like certain people's photos.
Where?
And then you can stop
Put a finger down if they got mad if you didn't respond in 5 minutes. Put a finger down if they ever got physical and threw something at you. Put a finger down if they were forced you sexually. Put a finger down if you had to
Stop
keep your
recording.
location services on. Put a finger